You've been told that changing your reality requires massive effort, endless visualization, and years of struggle. But what if I told you that quantum shift reality happens the moment you stop forcing and start embodying? What if the very act of trying is actually blocking the quantum field from reorganizing around your new identity? I'm going to share something with you today that completely flips everything you think you know about manifestation on its head. And if you've been spinning your wheels doing affirmations until you're blue in the face, visualizing so hard your head hurts, and still not seeing the results you want, this might be the most important thing you hear all year. Because here's what's really happening in the quantum field when you're trying to manifest. Every time you say, "I want this," or "I need that to happen," you're actually broadcasting from a frequency of lack. You're literally telling the universe, "I don't have this thing, so please give it to me." And the quantum field, being the perfect mirror that it is, reflects back exactly what you're putting out there, not lack. But quantum shift reality? That's a completely different game. It's not about wanting or needing or trying to get something. It's about becoming so aligned with the version of yourself who already has what you desire, that the external world has no choice but to reorganize itself to match your internal state. Now, I know this might sound like spiritual fluff, but stay with me because the science behind this is absolutely mind-blowing. When quantum physicists talk about the observer effect, they're describing how the act of observation literally collapses the wave function and determines which reality becomes physical. But here's the part they don't tell you in those dry academic papers. The quality of your observation, the state of being from which you observe, determines which possibility collapses into your experience. Think about it this way. When you're in a state of wanting, you're observing from lack. When you're in a state of trying, you're observing from effort and struggle. But when you're in a state of being, when you've embodied the frequency of already having what you desire, you're observing from wholeness. And the quantum field responds to wholeness by delivering experiences that match that frequency. I remember working with someone who had been trying to manifest a relationship for 3 years. 3 years of vision boards, dating apps, affirmations, you name it. She was doing everything right according to all the manifestation gurus. But she was still single and getting more frustrated by the day. When we started working together, the first thing I asked her was not about what she wanted, but about who she was being. She looked at me confused and said, "What do you mean, who am I being? I'm being someone who wants a relationship." And there it was. She was being someone who wanted, not someone who was already whole and complete and naturally magnetic to love. She was broadcasting need, not fulfillment. So we shifted the entire approach. Instead of trying to attract someone into her life, we focused on her becoming the version of herself who was already in a beautiful, loving relationship. Not pretending, not visualizing, but actually embodying the energy, the confidence, the joy, the openness that comes from being deeply loved and loving deeply in return. Within 6 weeks, she met her now husband. Not through any of the dating apps she'd been obsessing over, but through a completely unexpected encounter at a coffee shop. She wasn't even looking. She wasn't trying. She was just being herself, this new version of herself who knew she was worthy of love because she'd already given it to herself. This is what I call quantum shift reality. It's not about manipulating the external world to give you what you want. It's about shifting your internal state so completely that the external world naturally aligns with who you've become. But here's where most people get stuck, and this is crucial to understand. They try to embody the new state. They make embodiment another thing on their to-do list. They effort their way into being, and that completely defeats the purpose because you can't force your way into a state of natural being. True embodiment happens when you stop trying to become someone else and start removing everything that isn't authentically you. It's not about adding more practices or techniques or methods. It's about subtraction. It's about peeling away the layers of conditioning, the limiting beliefs, the stories you've been telling yourself about why you can't have what you want. The quantum field doesn't respond to what you do. It responds to what you are. And what you are at your core, before all the conditioning and programming, is already whole, already abundant, already worthy of everything you desire. The work isn't to become that person. The work is to remember that you already are that person. This is why quantum shift reality feels so effortless when it happens. There's no struggle because you're not trying to force something that isn't meant for you. You're simply allowing what's already yours in the quantum field to manifest in physical reality. It's like tuning into a radio station that's already broadcasting. You don't create the music. You just adjust your frequency to receive it clearly. Now, Let me get really practical with you because I don't want this to stay in the realm of theory. When you're in a state of true embodiment, there are specific things that happen in your nervous system, in your energy field, and in your relationship with reality that create the conditions for quantum shifts to occur naturally. First, your nervous system moves from a state of activation into a state of coherence. When you're trying to manifest something, your nervous system is often in a state of stress because there's this underlying tension between where you are and where you want to be. But when you embody the frequency of already having what you desire, that tension dissolves. Your heart rate variability becomes coherent. Your brain waves shift into states that are conducive to intuitive insights and synchronistic experiences. The HeartMath Institute has done fascinating research on this. They've shown that when your heart rhythm becomes coherent, it actually creates a measurable electromagnetic field that extends several feet beyond your body. This field carries information, and other people, animals, even electronic devices can pick up on this information. When you're in a coherent state, you're literally broadcasting a different signal into the quantum field. But here's what's even more interesting. When your heart is in coherence, it sends signals to your brain that put you into what researchers call a state of psychophysiological coherence. In this state, your intuition becomes incredibly sharp, your ability to perceive opportunities increases dramatically, and you naturally start making choices that align with your desired outcomes without having to think about it consciously. This is why people who have mastered quantum shift reality often say things like, "I just followed my intuition," or "It felt like the right thing to do," when you ask them how they created such dramatic changes in their lives. They weren't strategizing or forcing or trying to make things happen. They were in a state of coherence that allowed them to perceive and respond to the quantum possibilities that were already available to them. Second, your relationship with time changes completely. When you're trying to manifest something, you're constantly aware of the gap between now and when you'll finally have what you want. This creates a chronic state of not yet, which keeps you locked in a frequency of waiting and wanting. But when you embody the state of already having what you desire, you collapse the time gap. You bring the future into the present moment. This isn't just metaphysical speculation. Quantum physics has shown us that time isn't linear the way we experience it in everyday reality. At the quantum level, all possibilities exist simultaneously in what physicists call the eternal now. When you shift your state of being, you're literally selecting which timeline you experience from all the possible timelines that exist in the quantum field. I worked with an entrepreneur who had been struggling to grow his business for 2 years. He was working 18-hour days trying every marketing strategy, networking until he was exhausted, but his revenue was stuck at the same level month after month. When we started working together, I asked him to describe the version of himself who was already running a successful 7-figure business. At first, he could only describe the external circumstances, the office, the team, the bank account, but I pushed him deeper. How does that version of you move through the world? How does he make decisions? What does he believe about himself and his value? How does he relate to money, to clients, to opportunities? As he started to embody those qualities, something remarkable happened. He stopped chasing clients and started attracting them. He stopped working longer hours and started working more strategically. Within 4 months, he had his first 6-figure month. Not because he learned new tactics or strategies, but because he became the person who naturally creates those results. This is the power of quantum shift reality. When you embody the frequency of your desired outcome, you don't have to figure out how to make it happen. The how reveals itself through inspired action, synchronicities, and opportunities that seem to come out of nowhere, but are actually the natural result of your shifted state of being. But let me address something that might be coming up for you right now. You might be thinking, this sounds great in theory, but how do I actually embody a state I've never experienced before? How do I become someone I've never been? This is where most manifestation teachings fall short. They tell you to fake it till you make it or to visualize yourself already having what you want. But they don't give you the actual tools to shift your nervous system, your energy field, and your subconscious programming to support this new state of being. The truth is, embodiment isn't about pretending or visualizing. It's about accessing states that are already available within you. Every possible version of yourself already exists in the quantum field. The version of you who is wildly successful, deeply loved, perfectly healthy, completely free, that version isn't something you need to create. It's something you need to tune into. Think about it like this. Your consciousness is like a radio that can tune into different frequencies. Most people spend their entire lives tuned into the same few stations, the frequency of their past experiences, their conditioning, their familiar patterns. But there are infinite stations available, infinite versions of yourself broadcasting different realities. When you truly understand this, embodiment becomes less about trying to become someone new and more about exploring the full spectrum of who you already are. It's about giving yourself permission to tune into frequencies you might have never allowed yourself to experience before. Here's a simple way to start. Instead of asking yourself, how do I manifest this thing I want? Start asking, who would I be if I already had everything I desire? Not what would you do, not what would you have, but who would you be? What would be different about your energy, your presence, your way of moving through the world? And then here's the key. Start being that person now. Not tomorrow when you've figured it all out, not next week when you've done more inner work, but right now in this moment. Because the quantum field doesn't know the difference between a state you're embodying, because you have external evidence, and a state you're embodying, because you've chosen to align with that frequency. This is where quantum shift reality gets really exciting. You realize that you don't need permission from the external world to be who you truly are. You don't need to wait for circumstances to change before you can embody your highest potential. You can choose to tune into the frequency of your most authentic, powerful, abundant self right now, and watch as reality reorganizes itself to match that choice. But here's something crucial that I need you to understand. When you start embodying a new frequency, your external reality might not shift immediately. In fact, there's often a lag time between when you make the internal shift and when you see the external evidence. This is what I call the quantum gap, and it's where most people give up. They embody the new state for a few days or weeks, don't see immediate results, and assume it's not working. So they go back to their old patterns, their old frequency, and wonder why nothing ever changes in their life. But the quantum field is always responding. It's just that sometimes the response takes time to filter down from the quantum level into physical reality. During this quantum gap, it's essential to trust the process and continue embodying the new frequency, even when your external circumstances haven't caught up yet. This is where true mastery lies. Anyone can embody a new state when they have external evidence to support it, but embodying a new state purely because you've chosen to align with that frequency, regardless of what your current reality looks like, that's when you become a true quantum shifter. I remember going through this myself when I was transitioning from a corporate job that was slowly killing my soul to doing this work that I'm so passionate about. For months, I was embodying the frequency of someone who was already successfully helping people transform their lives through quantum principles, even though I was still sitting in a cubicle 8 hours a day feeling completely miserable. Every morning before work, I would spend time tuning into the version of myself who was already living my purpose, already making the impact I wanted to make, already free from the golden handcuffs of corporate life. I didn't visualize or affirm. I simply allowed myself to feel what it would feel like to wake up excited about my day, to know that my work was making a real difference in people's lives, to have the freedom to structure my time around what mattered most to me. For the first few months, nothing changed externally. I was still in the same job, still dealing with the same frustrations, still feeling trapped by my financial obligations. But something was shifting internally. I started having ideas for how I could transition. I began meeting people who were doing work similar to what I wanted to do. Opportunities started appearing that I had never noticed before. The breakthrough came when I realized I didn't need to wait for all the external pieces to fall into place before I could start being who I truly was. I started bringing the energy of my authentic self into my corporate job. I began helping colleagues with their personal challenges. I started speaking up in meetings with ideas that came from my deeper wisdom, rather than just trying to say what I thought people wanted to hear. Within 6 months, I had been offered a consulting opportunity that allowed me to leave my corporate job while still maintaining financial stability. Within a year, I was doing this work full-time. But the real shift happened the moment I stopped waiting for permission from the external world and started giving myself permission to be who I truly was, regardless of my circumstances. This is what quantum shift reality is really about. It's not about manipulating your external circumstances to make yourself feel better. It's about choosing to embody your highest frequency, regardless of your external circumstances, and then watching as those circumstances naturally align with your new state of being. Where in your life have you been waiting for external permission to be who you truly are? What frequency have you been afraid to embody because you don't have the external evidence to support it yet? These are the questions that will unlock your quantum shift reality. Because the truth is, most of us have been conditioned to wait for evidence before we allow ourselves to step into our power. We've been taught that we need to earn the right to be confident, successful, loved, abundant. But that's completely backwards from how the quantum field actually works. The quantum field responds to your state of being first, then creates the experiences that match that state. So when you wait for external evidence before you embody your desired frequency, you're putting the cart before the horse. You're asking the quantum field to give you something to feel good about instead of feeling good first, and allowing the field to respond to that frequency. This is why so many people get stuck in what I call the evidence trap. They say things like, "I'll believe it when I see it," or "Show me the money first, then I'll act abundant." But quantum shift reality requires you to flip that script completely. It requires you to believe it so you can see it. It requires you to embody abundance so the money can find you. Now, I want to get really specific about what this embodiment process actually looks like, because I don't want this to remain abstract. When you're truly embodying a new frequency, there are measurable changes that happen in your physiology, your energy field, and your behavior patterns that create the conditions for quantum shifts to occur. Let's start with your physiology. When you're in a state of lack or wanting, your body is in a stress response. Your cortisol levels are elevated, your heart rate variability is chaotic, your breathing is shallow, and your muscles are tense. This stress response literally blocks your ability to perceive opportunities and make clear decisions. It puts you in survival mode, which is focused on avoiding threats rather than creating possibilities. But when you embody the frequency of already having what you desire, your physiology shifts into what researchers call a coherent state. Your heart rhythm becomes smooth and ordered, your cortisol levels drop, your breathing naturally deepens, and your muscles relax. In this state, your prefrontal cortex comes online, which is the part of your brain responsible for creative thinking, pattern recognition, and intuitive insights. This is why breakthrough ideas and solutions often come when people are in relaxed states, taking a shower, going for a walk, or just waking up. They're not in the stressed, effortful state of trying to figure things out. They're in a coherent state where their brain can access information and make connections that aren't available when they're in survival mode. But here's what's even more fascinating. When you're in this coherent state, you actually start producing different brainwave patterns. Instead of the high beta waves associated with stress and overthinking, you start producing more alpha and theta waves, which are associated with creativity, intuition, and what some researchers call non-local awareness. Non-local awareness is the ability to perceive information that isn't available through your five senses. It's how entrepreneurs get hunches about market trends before they become obvious. It's how artists tap into creative inspiration that seems to come from beyond their personal experience. It's how people in quantum shift reality seem to have perfect timing and make decisions that lead to extraordinary outcomes. I had a client who was trying to sell her house for over a year. She had lowered the price 3 times, changed real estate agents twice, and was getting increasingly frustrated and desperate. Every day she would check the listing websites obsessively, worry about the mortgage payments, and feel more and more anxious about her financial future. When we started working together, I asked her to stop focusing on selling the house and start embodying the frequency of someone who was already financially free and living in her dream location. At first she resisted this idea. She said, "But I need to sell the house to be financially free. How can I feel financially free when I'm stuck with this mortgage?" This is such a common misconception. People think they need the external circumstance to change before they can feel the way they want to feel. But the quantum field works in reverse. You need to feel the way you want to feel first. Then the external circumstances shift to match that feeling. So we worked on helping her embody the frequency of financial freedom and location independence without needing the house to sell first. We helped her nervous system relax out of the chronic stress of trying to force a sale. We helped her tune into the version of herself who trusted that everything was working out perfectly, even when she couldn't see how. Within 2 weeks of making this shift, she received an unexpected offer on her house from someone who had been driving by and noticed the for sale sign. Not through her realtor, not through any of the online listings she had been obsessing over, but through a completely synchronistic encounter. The buyer offered her asking price and wanted to close quickly because they were relocating for work. This is quantum shift reality in action. When she stopped trying to force the sale and started embodying the frequency of what she actually wanted, which was financial freedom and location independence, The universe found a way to deliver that experience through the path of least resistance. But let me address something that might be coming up for you. You might be thinking, okay, this sounds great, but how do I actually shift into this coherent state? How do I embody a frequency I've never experienced before when my current reality is giving me every reason to feel stressed and worried? This is where most people get stuck because they're trying to use their mind to override their nervous system. They're trying to think their way into a new state of being. But your nervous system doesn't respond to thoughts. It responds to experiences, to felt sense, to what researchers call embodied cognition. The fastest way to shift your nervous system into coherence is through what I call quantum breathing. This isn't just deep breathing or meditation, though those can be helpful. Quantum breathing is a specific technique that uses your breath to literally reorganize your energy field and tune your nervous system to the frequency of your desired reality. Here's how it works. Your breath is the bridge between your conscious mind and your autonomic nervous system. When you breathe in specific patterns while holding the felt sense of your desired state, you're literally programming your nervous system to recognize that state as safe and familiar. Most people breathe from their chest when they're stressed, which keeps their nervous system in activation. But when you breathe from your belly, extending your exhale longer than your inhale, you activate your parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for rest, digest, and repair functions. This immediately shifts your physiology out of stress and into coherence. But quantum breathing goes deeper than just relaxation. While you're breathing in this coherent pattern, you imagine breathing in the qualities and feelings associated with your desired reality. If you want financial abundance, you breathe in the feeling of security, freedom, and generosity. If you want a loving relationship, you breathe in the feeling of being cherished, understood, and deeply connected. The key is not to visualize or think about these things, but to actually feel them in your body as you breathe. Your nervous system can't tell the difference between a feeling you're having because of external circumstances and a feeling you're generating through conscious embodiment. So when you consistently breathe in the feeling of your desired reality, your nervous system starts to recognize that frequency as your new normal. I had a client who was struggling with chronic anxiety and financial stress. She had been in therapy for years, tried every anxiety medication, and was still waking up every morning with her heart racing and her mind spinning with worst-case scenarios. Traditional approaches were helping her manage her anxiety, but they weren't addressing the root cause, which was her nervous system's addiction to stress and worry. When we started working with quantum breathing, something remarkable happened. Within just a few sessions, she began to experience states of calm and clarity that she hadn't felt since childhood. But more importantly, as her nervous system learned to recognize peace and abundance as safe states, her external reality began to shift. She started making different choices about her finances. Instead of avoiding her bank statements and credit card bills, she began engaging with her money from a place of calm curiosity. She started seeing opportunities for additional income that she had been too anxious to notice before. She began having conversations with her boss about a promotion that she had been too scared to initiate. Within 6 months, she had received 2 raises, started a side business that was generating an extra $1,000 a month, and had paid off most of her debt. But the most remarkable change was in her overall state of being. She went from someone who was constantly worried about the future to someone who felt genuinely excited about the possibilities ahead of her. This is the power of quantum breathing. It's not just a relaxation technique. It's a tool for literally reprogramming your nervous system to support the reality you want to create. When your nervous system recognizes abundance, love, success, and joy as safe states, you naturally start making choices and taking actions that create more of those experiences in your life. But embodiment goes beyond just nervous system regulation. True quantum shift reality requires you to align not just your physiology, but also your energy field with your desired frequency. And this is where things get really interesting from a scientific perspective. We know from quantum field theory that everything in the universe is made of energy vibrating at different frequencies. Your thoughts, emotions, beliefs, and intentions all have measurable electromagnetic signatures. When you're in a state of fear, lack, or limitation, you're broadcasting a very different electromagnetic pattern than when you're in a state of love, abundance, and possibility. The fascinating thing is that these electromagnetic patterns don't just stay contained within your body. They extend out into your environment and interact with the electromagnetic fields of other people, places, and even potential opportunities. This is why you can walk into a room and immediately sense the mood, or why you feel drawn to certain people and repelled by others before you've even spoken to them. When you're embodying the frequency of your desired reality, you're literally broadcasting that frequency into the quantum field, and the field responds by bringing you experiences, people, and opportunities that match that frequency. This isn't mystical thinking. This is measurable physics. The Global Consciousness Project at Princeton University has been measuring the electromagnetic effects of collective human consciousness for decades. They've shown that when large groups of people focus their attention on the same thing, it creates measurable changes in random number generators located around the world. If collective consciousness can affect electronic devices, imagine what your individual consciousness can do when it's coherently focused on your desired reality. But here's where most people sabotage themselves. They'll embody their desired frequency for a few minutes during meditation or visualization, but then they spend the rest of their day broadcasting worry, doubt, and limitation. It's like tuning into a beautiful radio station for 5 minutes and then switching back to static for the remaining 23 hours and 55 minutes of the day. Quantum shift reality requires consistency. It requires you to become so familiar with your desired frequency that it becomes your default state, not just something you access during your morning practice. This is what I call frequency mastery, and it's the difference between people who have occasional breakthrough moments and people who live in a constant state of flow and synchronicity. Frequency mastery isn't about being positive all the time or pretending that challenges don't exist. It's about maintaining your core frequency, even when temporary circumstances might be triggering old patterns. It's about having such a strong energetic foundation that external events can't knock you off your center for more than a few moments. I learned this lesson the hard way when I was building my business. I had gotten pretty good at embodying abundance and success during my morning practices, but as soon as I checked my bank account or had a potential client say no, I would immediately drop back into scarcity and self-doubt. I was like a yo-yo, up and down, abundant and scarce, confident and insecure. The breakthrough came when I realized that frequency mastery wasn't about avoiding challenges or negative emotions. It was about developing the ability to feel whatever was present without losing connection to my core frequency. I could feel disappointed about a business setback while still maintaining my underlying knowing that I was exactly where I needed to be. I could feel concerned about finances while still trusting that abundance was flowing toward me in ways I couldn't yet see. This is what true embodiment looks like. It's not about bypassing difficult emotions or pretending everything is perfect. It's about having such a solid foundation in your desired frequency that temporary challenges become like waves on the surface of a deep ocean. They're there, they're real, but they don't disturb the fundamental stillness and power at your core. When you reach this level of frequency mastery, quantum shifts become not just possible, but inevitable. You're no longer at the mercy of external circumstances because your state of being is generated from within. You're no longer waiting for the right opportunity because you're broadcasting the frequency that attracts opportunities naturally. You're no longer trying to manifest because you've become the embodiment of what you previously thought you needed to attract. This is when life starts to feel magical, but not in a fantasy way. It feels magical because you're finally operating in alignment with how the quantum field actually works. You're finally swimming with the current instead of against it. You're finally working with the fundamental forces of creation instead of trying to overcome them through effort and struggle. So let me ask you this. What would be possible in your life if you stopped trying to force outcomes and started embodying the frequency of your desired reality? What would change if you spent as much energy becoming who you want to be as you currently spend trying to get what you want to have? These aren't just philosophical questions. They're practical inquiries that can completely transform your relationship with manifestation and creation. Because when you shift from doing to being, from wanting to embodying, from trying to allowing, you step into the realm where quantum shift reality becomes not just possible, but natural. And this brings me to something that most manifestation teachers completely miss, something that could be the missing piece you've been searching for. They talk about embodiment as if it's something you do, another technique to add to your spiritual toolkit. But true embodiment isn't something you do, it's something you stop doing. Let me explain what I mean by this. Right now, you're probably expending enormous amounts of energy maintaining a version of yourself that isn't actually who you are. You're holding patterns, beliefs, and behaviors that were maybe necessary for survival at some point in your life, but are now blocking you from accessing your natural frequency of abundance, love, and creative power. Think about it like this. Imagine you're wearing a heavy winter coat in the middle of summer. The coat isn't inherently bad. It served a purpose when it was cold, but now it's preventing you from feeling the warmth of the sun on your skin. Most people spend their whole lives trying to manifest air conditioning instead of simply taking off the coat. Your limiting beliefs, your scarcity patterns, your fear-based behaviors, these are like that winter coat. They're not actually part of who you are. They're protective mechanisms you picked up along the way. And quantum shift reality becomes effortless when you stop trying to overcome these patterns and start simply letting them go. I worked with a woman who had been struggling with money blocks for years. She had done every healing modality you can imagine, cleared ancestral patterns, worked with therapists, coaches, and energy healers. She could tell you exactly where her money blocks came from. Her father's Depression-era mentality, her mother's belief that money corrupts people, her religious programming about poverty being virtuous. But knowing where the blocks came from wasn't setting her free. If anything, all the analysis was reinforcing the story that she was broken and needed to be fixed. When we started working together, I asked her a simple question. What if there's nothing wrong with you? What if underneath all these patterns and stories you're already naturally abundant? At first, she couldn't even consider the possibility. Her identity was so wrapped up in being someone who had money issues that the idea of being naturally abundant felt foreign and almost threatening. But slowly, we started peeling away the layers. Not by fighting the blocks, but by simply questioning whether they were actually true. The breakthrough came when she realized that her scarcity patterns weren't protecting her from anything real. They were protecting her from an imaginary threat, the fear that if she became abundant, she would become a bad person, like the wealthy people her parents had criticized when she was growing up. Once she saw that the threat wasn't real, the patterns began dissolving on their own. She didn't have to fight them or heal them or clear them. She just stopped feeding them with her attention and energy. It was like stopping watering a plant that you never actually wanted in your garden. Within 3 months, her income had doubled, not because she learned new business strategies or worked harder, but because she stopped unconsciously sabotaging her success. She stopped undercharging for her services, stopped avoiding opportunities that felt too good to be true, stopped making decisions from the fear of not having enough. This is what I mean when I say embodiment is about stopping rather than doing. When you stop maintaining patterns that aren't serving you, your natural frequency emerges automatically. You don't have to create abundance, love, or success. You just have to stop blocking them. But here's the tricky part. Most of us have been carrying these patterns for so long that we think they're actually part of our personality. We say things like, I'm just not good with money, or I'm not the type of person who gets lucky breaks, or love never works out for me. We've confused our temporary patterns with our permanent identity. This is where quantum shift reality requires a fundamental shift in how you see yourself. Instead of seeing yourself as someone who has problems that need to be solved, you start seeing yourself as someone who has temporarily forgotten their true nature. Instead of trying to fix what's wrong with you, you start remembering what's right with you. Your true nature, before all the conditioning and programming, is pure creative potential. You are literally made of the same quantum field that creates galaxies, orchestrates the seasons, and grows an entire human being from a single cell. The same intelligence that beats your heart and heals your wounds is the same intelligence that can reorganize your external reality to match your highest vision. When you really get this, not just intellectually, but in your bones, everything changes. You stop seeing yourself as separate from the creative force of the universe and start recognizing yourself as an expression of that force. You stop trying to manipulate the quantum field from the outside and start realizing that you are the quantum field expressing itself as a unique individual. This is when manifestation stops being about getting something you don't have and starts being about expressing something you already are. It's no longer about convincing the universe to give you what you want. It's about allowing the universe to express its infinite abundance through you. I remember the exact moment this shifted for me. I was sitting in meditation feeling frustrated because I was trying so hard to embody abundance, but still feeling this underlying sense of lack. And suddenly, it was like a light bulb went on. I realized I was trying to become abundant, but abundance was already my true nature. I wasn't lacking abundance, I was just blocking it with my beliefs about not being worthy of it. In that moment, I stopped trying to become abundant and started simply being abundant. Not because I had money in the bank or external evidence of prosperity, but because I recognized abundance as the fundamental nature of the quantum field that I am inseparable from. The shift was instantaneous and profound. Within weeks, Opportunities started appearing that I had never imagined possible. People started reaching out wanting to work with me. Money started flowing from unexpected sources. But the most remarkable change was internal. I stopped worrying about money, not because I had more of it, but because I knew at a cellular level that abundance was my birthright. This is the ultimate quantum shift reality. It's not about changing your circumstances. It's about changing your relationship with yourself and recognizing that you are not separate from the creative power of the universe. You are that power, temporarily forgetting itself, and then remembering. When you operate from this knowing, you don't manifest things. Things manifest through you as natural expressions of your true nature. You don't attract opportunities. You become so aligned with your authentic self that opportunities naturally gravitate toward you because you're in the flow of creation itself. But let me be real with you about something. This level of embodiment doesn't happen overnight. It's not about having one breakthrough moment and then living happily ever after. It's about consistently choosing to remember who you really are, especially when your old patterns are trying to convince you that you're still the limited version of yourself you used to believe you were. Your ego, your conditioned mind, your nervous system that's been trained to expect limitation, they're all going to resist this shift initially, not because they want to keep you small, but because they're trying to keep you safe based on old programming. It's like updating the software on your phone. The old version worked fine for what it was designed to do, but it can't handle the new possibilities you're trying to access. This is why community is so important in quantum shift reality. When you're surrounded by people who see your true nature even when you're temporarily forgetting it, it becomes much easier to maintain your new frequency. When you're part of a group that's committed to embodying their highest potential, you get to practice being that version of yourself in a supportive environment. If you're feeling a resonance with what I'm sharing, if something inside you is recognizing these truths, even if your logical mind is trying to figure out how it all works, I want you to know that you're not alone in this journey. There's a whole community of people who are waking up to their true nature and learning to live from that place of authentic power. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, because we're just getting started. I share new insights about quantum consciousness and embodied manifestation every week, and I want to make sure you don't miss anything that could be the key to your next breakthrough. And here's something I want you to try. In the comments below, I want you to share one word that describes the version of yourself you're ready to embody, not the version you think you should be, or the version other people expect you to be, but the version that feels most authentically you when you strip away all the conditioning and programming. Don't overthink it. Just let the word come through you. Because when you put that intention out into the quantum field, especially in a community of like-minded people, it starts to take on a life of its own. It starts to call forth experiences and opportunities that support you in becoming that version of yourself. What's fascinating is that as more people in our community start embodying their authentic frequency, it creates what researchers call a morphic field. This is a scientifically documented phenomenon where patterns of behavior and consciousness become easier to access as more people embody them. It's like creating a pathway through the forest. The first person has to push through the undergrowth, but each person who follows makes the path clearer and easier to navigate. This is why transformation often happens in waves. When enough people in a community or culture start embodying a new level of consciousness, it becomes available to everyone in that field. You've probably experienced this yourself. Maybe you've been working on an issue for months or years with little progress, and then suddenly, in the right environment with the right people, you have a breakthrough that seemed impossible before. This is the power of quantum field dynamics. Your individual transformation isn't just about you. It's contributing to a collective shift in consciousness that makes it easier for everyone to access their true nature and live from their authentic power. So as you're listening to this, know that you're not just learning information. You're participating in a field of transformation that extends far beyond your individual experience. Every time you choose to embody your highest frequency, you're making it easier for someone else to do the same. Every time you remember your true nature, you're strengthening the morphic field that supports others in remembering theirs. This is why I'm so passionate about this work. It's not just about individual manifestation or personal success. It's about participating in the evolution of human consciousness itself. It's about being part of the generation that remembers what we're truly capable of when we stop limiting ourselves and start expressing our full potential. What aspect of this quantum shift reality is calling to you most strongly right now? Is it the nervous system coherence, the frequency mastery, The recognition of your true nature as creative consciousness? Or is there something else that's emerging as you listen to these ideas?